symbol of power, of order, of an empire that once stretched across the known world. This is the Roman legionary, clad in gleaming segmented armor, the lyricus segmentata, a heavy rectangular shield, the scutum held firmly in one hand, and the distinctive helmet, the galea, casting a shadow over determined eyes. The rhythmic thud of his hobnailed sandals, the caligae on a long, straight Roman road, a sound that echoed from the misty forests of Britannia to the arid deserts of Syria. It's an image etched into our collective memory, an icon of disciplined might. But tonight, we journey beyond the polished bronze and the triumphant arches. We look past the parades and the tales of glorious conquest, to the man beneath the helmet, to the heart that beat within the armor. We seek the quiet truths, the lived reality of a life dedicated to Rome, a life often far removed from the gleaming facade. The air is still, the campfires burn low, and the stories of the legionaries begin to unfold, not in a shout, but in a whisper. But before we begin, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Videos this long take a lot of time and effort, and this serves me as motivation for my efforts. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And please let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. The Roman Empire awaits you on your journey. This image of the invincible Roman soldier, the hero of countless tales, often glosses over the stark, unyielding truth of his existence. The gleam of the armor was earned through relentless polishing, often with sand and vinegar, a daily ritual. The glory of victory was paid for in sweat, in blood, and in the gnawing ache of muscles pushed beyond their limits. Life as a Roman soldier was, in essence, a tapestry woven with threads of iron discipline, unceasing hardship, and the constant, quiet hum of danger. Think of the biting cold of a northern winter, the wind whipping through a leather tent, the rain seeping into woolen cloaks. Imagine the scorching sun of the eastern frontiers, the dust clinging to every surface, the ever-present thirst. This wasn't a life for the faint of heart, nor for those who crave comfort. It was a life of routine, of obedience, of surrendering individual will to the collective strength of the legion. The romanticized paintings and epic poems capture but a fleeting moment, a carefully curated highlight. Tonight, we pull back that curtain, gently, softly, to explore the unvarnished reality, the daily grind, the quiet endurance that truly defined the Roman soldier. Let the idealized image soften, like a distant landscape in the fading light, as we prepare to walk in his footsteps. The Roman military was not a monolith, frozen in time. Its story spans over 1,000 years, from the citizen soldiers of the early republic, defending their fledgling city, to the vast, complex professional army of the later empire, guarding frontiers that stretch for thousands of miles. When we speak of the Roman soldier, we are often picturing the legionary of the imperial period, perhaps from the 1st or 2nd century AD, the era of emperors like Augustus, Trajan, or Hadrian. This was the height of Roman power, the Pax Romana, a peace maintained by the ever-vigilant legions. But even within this time frame, there was diversity. The legionary, the citizen soldier forming the backbone of the army, was distinct from the auxiliary. Auxiliaries were recruited from the non-citizen populations of the empire, often bringing specialized skills. Cavalry from Gaul or Germania, archers from Syria. Their equipment might differ, their terms of service, their path to citizenship. And then there were the sailors of the Roman Navy, the classis, less sung perhaps, but vital for trade, transport, and control of the Mediterranean, Mare Nostrum, our sea. So, as we drift through this history, remember the many faces, the many roles that constituted the armed might of Rome, a force that evolved and adapted through centuries of conflict and consolidation. We will focus primarily on the legionary of the empire, the classic image, but we acknowledge the broader tapestry, the rich and varied experiences within this immense military machine. As we embark on this journey together, deeper into the world of the Roman soldier, if you find solace in these whispers of history, perhaps you might consider a gentle click on the like button, or even subscribe to our channel, so we can continue these explorations of the past, designed to soothe and inform as you drift towards sleep. And if a particular aspect of Roman military life intrigues you, or if you have a question slumbering in your mind, feel free to leave a comment below. We cherish these connections with fellow history enthusiasts. Our path tonight will be an immersive one. We will attempt to feel the weight of the pack, the sarcina, on our shoulders, to hear the sounds of the camp, the distant call of a trumpet, the murmur of Latin spoken by comrades from distant lands. We will experience the routine, the discipline, but also the camaraderie, the rare moments of respite, the hopes and fears that fill the soldiers' days and nights. This is not just a recitation of facts and figures, but an invitation to step, ever so softly, into another time, to understand the profound commitment and the often unseen challenges that defined life as a Roman soldier. Let the world outside fade away, let your breathing slow, and allow your mind to travel back to the age of eagles and legions. The watchfires are lit, the sentries are at their posts, and a hush falls over the camp. Our story begins to unfold, gently, softly. The first hint of dawn has yet to touch the sky. A deep, velvet darkness still blankets the camp, broken only by the dying embers of last night's watchfires and the steady gaze of the stars. But within the tents, a subtle stirring begins, long before the natural world deems it time to wake. The Roman soldier's day starts not with the gentle call of a bird, but with the sharp, clear blast of a horn, the bucina or the cornu. Its sound, though meant to command, is, in this quiet hour, almost a mournful cry across the sleeping rows of tents. There is no lingering, no gentle easing into consciousness. The moment the signal sounds, discipline takes hold. Sleep-heavy limbs are forced into motion. Cold leather straps are fumbled with, woolen tunics pulled over heads in the dim light filtering from a shared oil lamp, if they are lucky. The air is chilled, perhaps damp with dew or sharp with frost, depending on the season and the empire's vast geography. Basic ablutions are swift, a splash of cold water, perhaps. There are no lingering comforts here, no warm hearths to gather around just yet. The schedule is king, an unyielding master. Breakfast is a practical affair, not a leisurely meal. Perhaps some buxalatum, the hard biscuit that was a staple of the legionary diet, softened with water, or a sip of pasca, the vinegary wine diluted with water, surprisingly refreshing and a vital source of hydration and electrolytes. Its fuel, nothing more, consumed quickly, often standing. Every moment is accounted for, every action part of a larger, well-oiled machine. This strict adherence to routine, from the very first breath of the day, instills an order that will carry through the hours of rigorous training and potential chaos of battle. It's a quiet understanding, an unspoken agreement. The Legion moves as one, and that unity begins now, in the pre-dawn chill, with the simple act of waking and preparing, repeated day after weary day. Once the meager breakfast is done, and the camp begins to show more signs of life, the real work of the recruit, the asterisk tyro asterisk, begins. Basic training in the Roman army was a crucible designed to forge soft civilians into hardened soldiers, capable of enduring unimaginable hardship and executing complex maneuvers under extreme pressure. The physical demands were immense. Hours would be spent marching, endless, relentless marching. Not just a stroll, but route marches covering 20, sometimes 24 Roman miles in 5 hours, laden with full kit, armor, weapons, shield, entrenching tools, rations, a water skin, cooking pot, and personal belongings. This pack, the sarcina, could weigh upwards of 60 pounds, a crushing burden designed to build stamina and accustom the soldier to the loads they would carry on campaign. Then came the weapons drill, the armatura. Recruits would practice with wooden swords, the rudis, and wicker shields, often heavier than their service counterparts, to build strength and muscle memory. They would learn the precise, efficient movements of Roman combat. The short, stabbing thrust of the gladius, designed to slip between an enemy's ribs, the defensive posture behind the encompassing scutum, forming the famous testudo or tortoise formation, an almost impenetrable shell of shields. They'd practice against a wooden stake, the paulus, driven into the ground, attacking it relentlessly, learning to strike vital points, to parry, to maintain balance and footing. Every movement was scrutinized by the centurions and their junior officers, the options. Laziness was not tolerated. Mistakes were corrected, often harshly. But through this grueling repetition, a transformation occurred. Individuals began to move as a unit. They learned to anticipate each other's actions, to rely on the man to their left and right. Obedience became instinct. An order was not to be questioned, but executed instantly. This was about more than just fighting skill. It was about instilling an unbreakable discipline, a mental fortitude that could withstand the terror of the battlefield. It was about becoming a cog in the legion's unstoppable machinery. While every legionary received this core training in marching, fighting, and camp construction, the Legion was also a remarkably versatile organization, capable of far more than just line battles. Thus, some soldiers would receive specialized training, developing skills crucial for the Army's diverse operational needs. Imagine the immense siege engines, the ballistae that launched heavy bolts or stones with terrifying accuracy, the towering siege towers, the battering rams. These required skilled engineers and artillerymen, men trained in basic physics, construction, and mechanics. Soldiers might be trained as surveyors, to lay out the precise dimensions of a marching camp or a more permanent fort. Others became clerks, keeping the meticulous records of pay, supplies, and personnel that were essential to the administration of such a large force. There were medical orderlies, the capsarii, trained in battlefield first aid, blacksmiths, leather workers, and carpenters, ensuring the Legion could maintain its equipment even far from established workshops. These were not separate corps in the modern sense, but roles filled by legionaries who showed aptitude or were assigned these duties. This internal specialization made each legion a self-sufficient entity, capable of campaigning for extended periods in hostile territory, building bridges, roads, and fortifications as needed. The strength of Rome lay not just in its numbers, but in this depth of expertise, this ability to adapt and overcome any obstacle, whether a barbarian horde or a rugged mountain pass. Each specialized skill was another layer of resilience, another reason the Eagle's standard flew so far and for so long. Let us delve deeper, now, into the very fabric of that training, the daily reality that shaped these men. The Roman military historian Vegetius, writing in the later empire but drawing on earlier sources, gives us precious insight into this relentless conditioning. He describes how recruits were taught to jump, to run, to swim, often in full armor, because a soldier might need to cross a river swiftly or pursue a fleeing enemy. The physical conditioning was relentless. They didn't just learn to handle weapons. They became extensions of their own bodies. The training gladius and scutum, as we mentioned, were deliberately made heavier than the standard legionary equipment. The logic was simple and brutal. If you could fight effectively for an extended period with overweight gear, then handling the lighter service weapons in actual combat would feel almost effortless, even when fatigued or wounded. Imagine the strain on muscles, the burning in the lungs, as they repeatedly thrust, parried, and blocked with these cumbersome tools, under the watchful, critical eye of a hardened centurion, his vitus, the vine staff symbolic of his rank, always ready to deliver a sharp correction. The paulus, that simple wooden stake we spoke of, was the recruit's silent, unyielding opponent. Against it, he practiced not just wild swings, but precise, targeted attacks. He learned the economy of motion, the importance of footwork, how to protect his own body while creating openings in his opponent's defense. He was taught to thrust, not to slash, with the gladius. A thrust was quicker, deadlier, and exposed less of the soldier's own body to counterattack. This was drilled into them, over and over, until it became pure reflex. The rhythmic clang of wood on wood, the heavy breathing of exertion, the barked commands of the instructors. These were the daily sounds of the training ground. Marching, too, was more than just walking. It was an exercise in endurance and unit cohesion. Recruits learned to maintain precise distances, to change formation on the move, to navigate difficult terrain without breaking step. They practiced the greatest militaris, the standard military pace, and the greatest plenus or greatest celerier, a faster pace. ensuring the Legion could cover ground with astonishing speed when necessary. They would march under a baking sun, through driving rain, and biting cold, always with their full 60-pound pack. The impedimenta, because that was the reality of campaigning. This wasn't just about physical toughness, it was about mental resilience. It was about pushing past the point of exhaustion, about learning that the body could endure far more than the mind initially believed. The psychological impact of this constant drill and iron discipline was profound. It stripped away individual civilian habits and remolded men into soldiers. The recruit learned to suppress his personal fears and discomforts for the good of the unit. He learned that his survival often depended on the man standing next to him, and that man's survival depended on him. This fostered an intense camaraderie, a brotherhood forged in shared hardship. The Legion became their family, their world. The Centurions, though often harsh taskmasters, were also experienced veterans who understood what it took to survive. Their discipline, while severe, was usually purposeful, aimed at ingraining the skills and mindset necessary for victory and survival. There was a saying, "Sweat in peace, bleed less in war." Every grueling hour on the training field was an investment against future loss. The constant repetition, the immediate correction of errors, the demand for unwavering obedience created a soldier who would react instinctively in the chaos of battle, following orders without hesitation, holding the line even when fear threatened to overwhelm. This psychological conditioning was perhaps as important as the physical training. It created a predictability, a reliability, that made the Roman legion such a formidable fighting force. They were not just strong, they were unshakable. The mind, as much as the body, was a weapon, and it too was sharpened daily on the whetstone of Roman military routine. The endless drills, the perfectly executed maneuvers, the construction of identical marching camps each night, all reinforced this sense of order, of Roman method imposed upon a chaotic world. It was a powerful psychological tool, both for the soldier himself and for any enemy who witnessed this relentless, disciplined efficiency. It spoke of a power that was more than just brute force. It was the power of system, of training, of a collective will honed to a razor's edge. And as the recruit endured, as he mastered the drills and absorbed the discipline, he slowly ceased to be a tyro. He became a Miles, a soldier, a vital part of the living, breathing entity that was the Roman legion, ready to project Rome's power to the very edges of the known world. The journey was arduous, almost beyond imagining for us today, but it was this very rigor that laid the foundation for an empire that would endure for centuries. The echoes of their training sandals, marching in unison, still whisper to us across the ages, a testament to their endurance and the unyielding discipline that defined them. The sun, a molten orb climbing over the horizon, didn't signal a gentle awakening for the legionary. It heralded the start of another day, etched with duty. For many, that duty began with the somber responsibility of guard duty. Imagine standing watch as the first rays of dawn paint the sky. The air is often cold, damp with dew. Your senses are heightened. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, a potential threat. Hours can stretch into an eternity, a monotonous cycle of pacing along the ramparts of a fort or the perimeter of a hastily constructed marching camp. The weight of your armor, the scutum resting heavily on your arm, becomes a dull ache. Your eyes scan the surrounding landscape, searching for any anomaly, any flicker of movement that shouldn't be there. The fortifications themselves, often built by the very men who now guard them, offer a degree of security, but they are not impenetrable. The threat of a sudden raid, a desperate attempt by a local tribe to harass or steal supplies, is ever present. A moment's lapse in concentration could have dire consequences for your comrades sleeping within the camp. The tension is a constant companion, a low hum beneath the surface of the apparent stillness. You learn to read the subtle signs, the behavior of birds, the way the wind carries sounds, the almost imperceptible shift in shadows. This wasn't glorious combat. It was a test of endurance, of unwavering vigilance against an unseen enemy. The mental fortitude required to maintain this level of alertness, day after day, night after night, was as crucial as any martial skill. But the Roman soldier was far more than just a warrior. He was a builder, an engineer, a vital cog in the vast machinery of Roman expansion. Construction and labor were integral parts of his daily life. When not training or fighting, the legionary would often find himself wielding a pickaxe and shovel instead of a gladius. The Roman Empire was built on its infrastructure, and the legions were its primary construction force. From the famed straight roads that crisscrossed the provinces, allowing for rapid troop movement and communication, to the imposing forts that served as centers of Roman power, the soldiers provided the muscle and often the skill. Imagine the back-breaking labor of clearing forests, leveling ground, and quarrying stone under the scorching sun or in the biting cold. They built bridges that spanned raging rivers, their arches testaments to Roman ingenuity. They erected walls and ramparts, transforming strategic locations into defensible strongholds. This wasn't simply brute force. Many legionaries possessed or acquired valuable engineering skills. They understood surveying, carpentry, and masonry. They could operate siege engines and construct complex fortifications based on established Roman designs. This practical expertise not only built the physical infrastructure of the empire, but also fostered a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose beyond the battlefield. The ability to transform the landscape with their own hands was a tangible demonstration of Roman power and their commitment to establishing a lasting presence. Beyond the relative safety of the camp or the structured labor of construction lay the often perilous duty of patrols and scouting. These missions took legionaries into potentially hostile territory, demanding a different kind of vigilance and a heightened sense of awareness. Imagine small groups of soldiers venturing out from the established Roman lines. Their mission could be to gather intelligence about enemy movements, scout potential ambush locations, or simply maintain order in newly conquered regions. Every shadow could conceal a hidden enemy, every bend in the trail a potential trap. The air would be thick with tension, the silence broken only by the creak of leather armor and the soft thud of their callagi on the unforgiving terrain. Encounters with hostile tribes or bandits were a constant risk. These skirmishes could be swift and brutal, testing the soldiers' discipline and their ability to react instantly to danger. Patrols required keen observation skills, the ability to read tracks and other signs, and the courage to press forward even when facing uncertainty. The information they gathered was vital for the legion's overall strategy, providing commanders with the knowledge needed to make informed decisions about troop deployments and potential threats. Maintaining order in conquered territories also meant dealing with local disputes, suppressing unrest, and ensuring the safety of Roman citizens and allies. This delicate balancing act required not only military prowess, but also a degree of diplomacy and understanding of local customs. Underlying all these duties was the fundamental principle of combat readiness. The Roman legion was a fighting machine, and its effectiveness depended on the constant state of preparedness of each individual soldier. Imagine the daily rituals of maintaining weapons and equipment. The Lyricus segmentata, that iconic segmented armor, required meticulous cleaning and oiling to prevent rust. Swords and daggers had to be kept razor sharp. Shields needed repair after any damage. This wasn't just about functionality. It instilled a sense of responsibility and pride in their gear. A well-maintained weapon could be the difference between life and death. Regular drills and exercises were the lifeblood of the legion's combat effectiveness. Hour after hour, day after day, soldiers practiced formations, maneuvers, and weapon handling. They learned to move as a cohesive unit, to obey commands instantly, and to fight effectively in close quarters. These drills were designed to build muscle memory, to instill discipline, and to ensure that every soldier knew his role within the larger fighting force. The constant repetition might have seemed monotonous, but it forged an unbreakable unity and a level of coordination that made the Roman legion the most formidable fighting force of its time. The anticipation of battle was a constant undercurrent in the legionary's life. Even during periods of relative peace, the threat of war loomed large. News of unrest on the frontiers, the rise of a new enemy, or a call for reinforcements could shatter the routine at any moment. This constant awareness, this ingrained expectation of conflict, shaped their mindset. They lived with a sense of purpose, knowing that their training and their dedication could be called upon at any time to defend Rome and its interests. Let's now immerse ourselves more deeply into the fabric of a legionary's day, to truly understand the intricate tapestry of their responsibilities. Imagine waking not to the gentle chirping of birds, but to the harsh blast of a bugle, cutting through the pre-dawn chill. The air in the barracks, a long, communal structure, would be thick with the smell of sleep, sweat, and the lingering scent of wood smoke from the previous night's meager meal. The first order of the day was often muster. Each soldier would report to his centurion, a hardened veteran who commanded a century, roughly 80 men. This was a time for roll call for the centurion to inspect his men, their equipment, and their overall condition. Any soldier found lacking, be it unpolished armor, a dull blade, or signs of illness, would face swift and often harsh reprimands. This meticulous attention to detail was fundamental to maintaining the legion's efficiency. Following muster, the day's duties would be assigned. For some, it would be guard duty. Imagine drawing lots or being assigned your post. Perhaps you find yourself on the ramparts overlooking a vast, empty plain. The initial novelty quickly fades into a test of endurance against boredom and the elements. Hours crawl by. The sun climbs higher, beating down on your helmet. Your mouth feels dry. Your muscles ache from standing still or pacing the same stretch of wall. You scan the horizon relentlessly, your mind constantly replaying your training, reminding you of the potential dangers. Suddenly, a shout pierces the stillness, a flicker of movement in the distance. Your heart pounds in your chest. Is it an enemy raiding party? A group of local tribesmen? You grip your scutum tighter, your hand instinctively moving to the hilt of your gladius. You strain your eyes, trying to discern the figures. The tension is palpable, every nerve ending screaming for clarity. It could be nothing, a herd of wild animals perhaps, but the training has ingrained in you the need to be prepared for the worst. You signal to your comrades, your voice hoarse but urgent. The camp within stirs to life, the sounds of activity replacing the earlier quiet. This brief moment of heightened alert, even if it turns out to be a false alarm, underscores the constant psychological burden of guard duty. The need to be perpetually ready, to switch from mind-numbing monotony to high alert in an instant, took its toll. For others, the day might involve the arduous task of construction. Imagine being part of a work detail, tasked with building a section of a Roman road. The sun beats down mercilessly on your back as you swing a heavy pickaxe, breaking up the stubborn earth. Sweat stings your eyes. Your muscles scream in protest. The air is filled with the dust and the rhythmic clang of tools. You work alongside your comrades, a shared sense of exhaustion and purpose binding you together. You learn the techniques of laying a solid foundation, of packing stones tightly, of ensuring the road is straight and durable. This labor is physically demanding, often leaving you drained at the end of the day. Yet, there is a sense of accomplishment in seeing the tangible results of your efforts, in knowing that you are contributing to the expansion and consolidation of Roman power. Or perhaps your duty lies in a patrol. Imagine marching in formation through unfamiliar territory. The landscape might be rugged and unforgiving, the path winding and treacherous. You move with practiced efficiency, your shield held ready, your eyes constantly scanning your surroundings. The centurion barks orders, maintaining the cohesion of the group. You learn to read the terrain, to identify potential ambush sites, to move silently and cautiously. You might encounter local inhabitants, their reactions ranging from fear to hostility. Maintaining discipline and avoiding unnecessary conflict is paramount, but you must also be prepared to defend yourselves if attacked. Sometimes patrols involve gathering intelligence. This could mean observing enemy fortifications, tracking troop movements, or even interrogating captured individuals. The risks were significant. A small patrol venturing too deep into hostile territory could be easily ambushed and wiped out. The ability to think quickly, to make sound judgments under pressure, and to fight effectively when outnumbered was crucial for survival. These experiences, the constant exposure to danger and the responsibility for the lives of your comrades, forge a unique bond among the men who served together. Regardless of the specific task, the underlying principle was always combat readiness. Even during seemingly mundane duties, the legionary was expected to maintain his equipment and his physical condition. Imagine spending your downtime meticulously cleaning your gladius, sharpening its edge until it gleamed. You check the fastenings of your larica segmentata, ensuring every plate is secure. You repair any tears in your tunic or your caligy. This constant attention to detail was not simply an exercise in discipline. It was a matter of survival. A soldier whose equipment failed him in battle put not only his own life, but also the lives of his comrades at risk. Drills were a constant feature of legionary life. Imagine the repetitive movements of forming a testudo, the shield wall that offered protection against missile attacks. You move in unison with your comrades, your shields locking together to create an impenetrable barrier. You practice attacking in wedge formations, designed to break through enemy lines. You learn to throw your pilum with accuracy and force. These drills, performed countless times, ingrained the necessary skills and coordination into the very muscle memory of the legionaries. They became second nature, allowing them to react instinctively in the chaos of battle. The constant anticipation of war had a profound psychological impact on the Roman soldier. Imagine living with the knowledge that at any moment, your life could be forfeit. The letters from home, when they arrived, were a precious link to a life that felt increasingly distant. The faces of loved ones might begin to fade in memory, replaced by the grim realities of military service. The camaraderie within the Legion offered a sense of belonging and support, but it could not entirely erase the underlying anxiety and the awareness of mortality. The long periods of monotony could be mentally draining, punctuated by moments of intense fear and violence. The psychological toll of witnessing death and destruction, of participating in brutal campaigns, could leave lasting scars. Yet, the Roman military system was designed to mitigate these effects. The strong emphasis on discipline, the shared experiences, and a clear sense of purpose helped soldiers to cope with the stresses of military life. The rituals and routines provided a sense of stability in a chaotic world. The promise of land and citizenship upon completion of their service offered a tangible reward for their sacrifices. In the quiet moments around the campfire, after a long day of labor or patrol, the legionaries might share stories, reminisce about home, or simply find solace in each other's company. These moments of human connection were vital in sustaining their morale and their sense of shared identity. They were bound together by their service to Rome, by the hardships they had endured, and by the knowledge that their lives were inextricably linked. The daily duties and responsibilities of a Roman soldier were far removed from the romanticized image of the conquering hero. They were a demanding blend of physical labor, constant vigilance, and rigorous training, all underscored by the ever-present threat of violence. Yet, it was this very dedication to duty, this unwavering discipline, and this profound sense of collective purpose that forged the Roman legion into the most effective military force of its age, the bedrock upon which an empire was built and sustained. The echoes of their daily lives, the rhythmic thud of their work, the watchful silence of their guard duty, still resonate through the annals of history, a testament to the enduring power of human will and the price of empire. The training, the discipline, the endless drills, all culminated in one terrifying purpose: war. The Roman soldier was, at his core, a fighting man, and the experience of battle was the ultimate test, the crucible where courage, skill, and sheer luck determined who lived and who died. To understand the Roman soldier in battle, we must first understand his tools of war, his weaponry and armor. Imagine the weight of it all. The larica segmentata, that iconic segmented armor, wasn't just for show. It offered superb protection against slashing blows, those common in close-quarters combat. But it was heavy, restricting movement to some extent, and requiring constant maintenance to prevent rust. Each segment had to be meticulously cleaned and oiled. Then there was the gladius, the short, double-edged sword, the legionary's primary weapon. It was designed for thrusting in close combat, a quick, efficient killer. Imagine the soldier's hand gripping the hilt, the cold steel slick with sweat, the weight of the blade as he lunged forward, and the pilum, the heavy javelin, thrown before the charge to disrupt enemy formations. Two of these were typically carried, their iron points designed to bend on impact, making them difficult to remove from shields and forcing the enemy to discard them. Think of the moment before the clash, the tension as the legionaries hurled their pila, the air filled with whistling projectiles. The scutum, the large rectangular shield, was more than just protection. It was an offensive weapon in itself. Soldiers used it to shove opponents, to create openings for their gladius thrusts. It was a mobile wall, allowing the legionaries to advance in relative safety. All this equipment, the armor, the weapons, the shield, added up to a significant burden. Soldiers trained to fight encumbered, to move, to attack, to defend, all while bearing this weight. It demanded strength, stamina, and a grim determination. But Roman success wasn't just about individual weaponry. It was about battle formations. The legion was a master of organized combat, its strength lying in its discipline and its ability to maneuver as a single entity. Imagine the lines of legionaries, shoulder to shoulder, a wall of shields advancing in perfect unison. This was the AC's triplex, the standard battle line, providing depth and reserves. And then there was the testudo, the tortoise formation, an almost impenetrable defense against missile attacks. Shields were held overhead and to the front, creating a protective shell. It was slow but incredibly effective in siege warfare or against enemies relying heavily on ranged weapons. The wedge formation, the cuneus, was an offensive tactic used to break through enemy lines. Imagine the legionaries packed tightly together, their combined momentum driving them into the enemy ranks. These formations, drilled endlessly, allowed the legionaries to maintain cohesion and order even in the chaos of battle. They were not just individuals fighting. They were part of a larger, disciplined whole, each man relying on his comrades, each movement precise and practiced. But let's not romanticize it. Warfare in the ancient world was brutal, a horrifying spectacle of the brutality of warfare. Imagine the noise, the chaos, the sheer sensory overload of battle. The air would be thick with dust and smoke, obscuring vision. The ground would be slick with blood. The screams of the wounded, the shouts of the combatants, the clash of weapons, a deafening cacophony that could shatter the senses. The reality of hand-to-hand combat was visceral and terrifying. The gladius, that short sword, was designed for stabbing, for quick, efficient kills. Imagine the horror of seeing a comrade fall, the sickening thud of a blade finding its mark. The physical demands were immense. Soldiers fought in close quarters, pushing, shoving, hacking, and thrusting. Exhaustion quickly set in, muscles burning, lungs screaming for air. Even victory came at a cost, and the psychological trauma was profound. Witnessing death, inflicting violence, the constant fear. These experiences left deep scars. Many soldiers were forever changed by what they saw and did in battle. The aftermath of combat was often just as horrific. The battlefield became a scene of carnage, littered with the dead and the dying. Looting was common, bodies stripped of their valuables. The stench of death hung heavy in the air. Beyond the open field, the Roman soldier also faced the grim realities of siege warfare. Sieges were a common feature of Roman campaigns, as they sought to capture fortified cities and strongholds. Imagine the construction of siege engines, the ballistae, hurling massive stones and projectiles, the onagers, catapults designed to break down walls, the siege towers, allowing soldiers to assault fortifications from above. These were complex machines, requiring skilled engineers and laborers. Battering rams, often housed in protective structures, pounded against gates and walls, attempting to breach the defenses. The defenders would rain down missiles, arrows, stones, boiling oil, trying to repel the attackers. Sieges could be long and arduous, lasting for months or even years. Soldiers endured disease, starvation, and constant attacks. The psychological strain of prolonged siege warfare was immense. When a city finally fell, the consequences could be devastating. The Romans were often ruthless in their treatment of conquered populations, with widespread slaughter and enslavement. Let us now delve into a more detailed exploration of these realities to truly grasp the visceral nature of ancient warfare and its impact on the Roman soldier. The weapons of the Roman legionary were designed for efficiency and lethality. The gladius hispaniensis, adopted from Spanish swords, was the primary weapon. It was a short, double-edged sword, typically 60 to 85 centimeters long, ideal for the close-quarters fighting that characterized ancient battles. Soldiers were trained to use it with swift, stabbing thrusts, aiming for the abdomen or groin, where a single well-placed blow could quickly incapacitate an enemy. The gladius was not a slashing weapon. Thrusting was quicker, more accurate, and exposed less of the user's body. The pilum was another crucial element of the legionary's arsenal. These heavy javelins were designed to disrupt enemy formations before the legionaries closed in for hand-to-hand combat. Each soldier typically carried two pila, one heavy and one lighter. The pilum's design was ingenious. Its long, soft iron shank would bend upon impact, making it difficult for the enemy to reuse and often rendering their shields useless. Imagine the psychological impact of a volley of pila raining down on your ranks, the chaos and confusion they caused. The scutum was the large, rectangular shield that provided excellent protection. Made of layers of wood glued together and covered with leather, it was curved to deflect blows. The scutum was not merely a defensive tool. It was also used offensively to push and shove opponents, creating openings for attack. It was an extension of the soldier's arm, a mobile wall that allowed him to advance and fight with greater confidence. Armor varied throughout Roman history, but the larica segmentata is perhaps the most iconic. This segmented armor, made of overlapping iron strips, provided excellent protection against slashing weapons. However, it was heavy and required regular maintenance to prevent rust. Soldiers also wore helmets, the galea, to protect their heads, and sometimes greaves to protect their legs. The weight of this armor, combined with weapons and shield, could easily exceed 60 pounds, demanding incredible strength and endurance. The Romans were masters of battlefield tactics. Their success built upon discipline, training, and the ability to adapt to different situations. Formations were crucial. The standard battle line, the acies triplex, consisted of 3 lines of legionaries. The first line, the principes, was composed of experienced veterans. Behind them stood the hastati, younger, but still seasoned soldiers, and finally, the triarii, the oldest and most experienced, forming a reserve. This formation provided depth and flexibility, allowing the Romans to rotate units and maintain a continuous fighting front. The testudo formation was a particularly effective tactic, especially against missile attacks. The legionaries would form a tortoise by locking their shields together, creating a virtually impenetrable barrier. This formation allowed them to advance under heavy fire, protecting them from arrows, javelins, and stones. The cuneus, or wedge formation, was an offensive tactic designed to break through enemy lines. Soldiers would form a triangle, with the strongest and most experienced at the front, driving into the enemy ranks with concentrated force. This formation required precise timing and coordination, but could be devastatingly effective. Roman legions often fought alongside auxiliary units, which provided specialized support. Cavalry, archers, and slingers supplemented the legionaries, providing ranged attacks, flanking maneuvers, and reconnaissance. This combination of heavy infantry and auxiliary forces made the Roman army a versatile and formidable fighting machine. The reality of ancient warfare was far removed from the idealized depictions in art and literature. It was a brutal, chaotic, and terrifying experience. Imagine the moments before the battle. The tension is palpable. Soldiers stand in formation, their hearts pounding in their chests. The air is thick with anticipation and fear. The enemy lines loom in the distance, a mass of humanity ready to clash. The trumpet sounds, the signal to advance. The legionaries move forward, a wall of shields, their feet pounding the earth. Then the pila are thrown, whistling through the air, impacting with a sickening thud. The lines meet with a crash. A maelstrom of violence erupts. Soldiers fight hand to hand, their gladii flashing, their shields clashing. The noise is deafening. The screams of the wounded, the shouts of the combatants, the clash of metal on metal. The fighting is close and brutal. Soldiers grapple with their opponents, pushing, shoving, and stabbing. Exhaustion sets in quickly, muscles burning, lungs gasping for air. The ground becomes slick with blood, making it difficult to maintain footing. The fear is overwhelming. Soldiers witness their comrades falling, their bodies mutilated. The smell of blood and sweat fills the air. The instinct for self-preservation battles with the need to maintain formation and fight on. Battles could turn quickly. A broken formation, a flanking maneuver, or a sudden charge could rout an army. The retreat could be even more chaotic and deadly than the initial engagement, as soldiers fled in panic, pursued by their enemies. The aftermath of battle was often a scene of horror. The battlefield was littered with the dead and the dying. Wounded soldiers lay in agony, awaiting medical attention that might never come. Looters moved among the corpses, stripping them of valuables. The stench of death hung heavy in the air. Siege warfare was another common and brutal aspect of Roman military operations. Capturing fortified cities and strongholds was crucial for controlling territory and resources. The Romans were masters of siegecraft, employing a variety of tactics and technologies. They built siege engines, ballistae, onagers, and siege towers to bombard fortifications and breach walls. Battering rams, often housed in protective structures, were used to smash gates and walls. Sieges could be long and drawn out, lasting for months or even years. Soldiers endured harsh conditions, disease, and constant attacks. The psychological strain of prolonged siege warfare was immense, with soldiers facing the constant threat of death and the frustration of slow progress. When a city was finally captured, the consequences for its inhabitants could be devastating. The Romans often showed little mercy, with widespread slaughter, enslavement, and looting. The destruction of a city could be a horrific spectacle, a testament to the brutality of ancient warfare. The emotional and psychological toll of warfare on the Roman soldier cannot be overstated. They were not simply fighting machines. They were human beings with emotions, fears, and vulnerabilities. The constant exposure to violence and death could have a profound impact on their mental state. Many soldiers suffered from what we might today call post-traumatic stress disorder, experiencing flashbacks, nightmares, and anxiety. The psychological scars of war could last a lifetime. The fear of death was a constant companion. Soldiers lived with the knowledge that they could be killed or maimed at any moment. This fear could be debilitating, affecting their performance and their morale. The separation from family and loved ones was another significant burden. Soldiers often served for many years, far from their homes, missing important life events. The longing for home and the worry for their families weighed heavily on their minds. Yet, amidst the brutality and hardship, there was also camaraderie and loyalty. Soldiers formed strong bonds with their comrades, relying on each other for support and protection. The shared experiences of war forged a unique brotherhood, a bond that could be as strong as any family tie. The realities of combat for the Roman soldier were harsh and unforgiving. They faced physical danger, psychological trauma, and the constant threat of death. Yet, they endured, driven by duty, discipline, and loyalty to Rome and their comrades. Their experiences, though brutal, shaped the course of history, forging an empire that would leave an indelible mark on the world. The echoes of their battles, the clash of steel, the cries of the fallen, still whisper to us across the centuries, a reminder of the enduring cost of war and the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit. Beyond the clash of steel and the dust of the battlefield, the Roman legionary's life was also defined by the rhythm of camp life and camaraderie. For every hour spent in combat or on grueling duty, there were countless hours spent building, maintaining, and simply living within the temporary cities that followed the Roman legions across the landscape. Imagine the scene at the end of a long march. As dusk begins to settle, the legion grinds to a halt, but there is no rest yet. The well-oiled machine of the Roman army immediately sets about camp construction. This wasn't a haphazard affair. It was a precisely orchestrated operation. a testament to Roman engineering and discipline. A carefully chosen site, often near water and with defensible terrain, would be surveyed and marked out with astonishing speed. Within hours, a fortified camp would begin to take shape. First, the digging of the ditch, the fossa, a significant obstacle for any potential attackers. Then, the raising of the rampart, the vallum, often topped with sharpened stakes, the sudes, carried by each legionary. These weren't mere suggestions. They were vital components of the camp's defenses, erected with an efficiency that must have demoralized any enemy observing. The layout within the camp was equally standardized. Straight roads, the vai, intersected at right angles, dividing the camp into neat blocks. The praetorium, the general's tent, stood at the center, a symbol of Roman authority. Around it were the tents of the senior officers, the tribunes, and centurions. Each century had its designated area, its tents pitched in precise rows. The baggage train, the impedimenta, was carefully positioned for security. This wasn't just about order, it was about functionality, allowing for rapid deployment in case of attack and efficient management of supplies. Camp discipline was paramount. Every soldier knew his place, his duties, and the consequences of negligence. A well-constructed and well-maintained camp was not just shelter. It was a temporary Roman territory, a symbol of their presence and their intent to stay. Sustaining this vast army on the move was a logistical marvel. Rations and supplies were the lifeblood of the legion. Imagine the typical diet of a Roman soldier. It wasn't a gourmet affair, but it was designed to be basic, nutritious, and sustaining. The staple was often fermentum, wheat, which the soldiers themselves would grind into flour and bake into hardtack biscuits, buxolatum. These were tough, often stale, but provided essential carbohydrates. Alongside the hardtack, their diet would include pulse, a thick porridge made from grains and water, sometimes supplemented with vegetables like beans, lentils, and onions, if available. Meat was a less frequent luxury, often salted pork or beef. Pasca, a mixture of sour wine and water, was a common drink, a way to purify water and provide a bit of energy. Supplying this vast number of men on the march was a constant challenge. Convoys of wagons, often escorted by auxiliary troops, would carry essential supplies. Foraging from the land was also common, though this could lead to conflict in hostile territory. The Roman logistical system, while impressive for its time, was always vulnerable to disruption, and a cut supply line could quickly cripple an army. The daily grind of a soldier included not just fighting and building, but also the constant awareness of the need for sustenance, a fundamental reality of life on campaign. Amidst the hard labor and constant vigilance, there were moments of respite, precious periods of leisure and recreation. Imagine the limited free time a legionary might have after a day of marching and camp construction. How did they fill those hours? Games were a common pastime. Dice games, board games like ludus tranquilorum, a type of drafts or chess, provided mental stimulation and a chance for friendly rivalry. Storytelling was another popular form of entertainment. Veterans would recount tales of past campaigns, of heroic deeds and narrow escapes, passing down the lore and history of the Legion. These stories helped to build a shared identity and reinforce the values of courage and loyalty. Socializing around the campfire, sharing food and drink, was crucial for maintaining morale and fostering camaraderie. Singing and simple musical instruments might also provide a brief escape from the harsh realities of military life. These moments of leisure, though fleeting, were vital for recharging both body and mind, helping soldiers to cope with the stresses of their demanding existence. Perhaps the most enduring aspect of camp life was the formation of the bonds of brotherhood. Imagine spending years alongside the same men, sharing the same hardships, facing the same dangers. These shared experiences forged powerful connections, a sense of camaraderie that went far beyond mere companionship. Soldiers relied on each other for survival, both in battle and in the daily routines of camp life. They shared their meager rations, nursed each other through illness and injury, and mourned together when a comrade fell. This mutual support was essential for maintaining morale and unit cohesion. Knowing that your comrades had your back, that you could rely on them in times of crisis, provided a vital sense of security in a dangerous world. Loyalty to one's century, to one's legion, was deeply ingrained. It was a matter of pride, of identity, and of survival. These bonds of brotherhood were the glue that held the Roman army together, transforming a collection of individuals into a formidable fighting force. They were the silent strength that underpinned Rome's military might, a testament to the enduring power of human connection in the face of adversity. Let's delve deeper into the intricacies of this communal existence. This life lived within the temporary walls of a Roman camp. Imagine the sheer scale of constructing a fortified camp each night. It wasn't simply a matter of pitching tents. The Roman marching camp, or castra, was a marvel of military engineering, a testament to their meticulous planning and organizational skills, as mentioned in our earlier exploration of their training. The process began with the selection of a suitable location. Considerations included access to water, defensible terrain, and sufficient space for the legion and its baggage train. Once a site was chosen, surveyors, using specialized equipment, would quickly mark out the precise dimensions of the camp. A typical legionary camp was rectangular, with rounded corners, and could cover an area of 50 to 60 acres, large enough to house thousands of men. The entire legion would then fall into a well-rehearsed routine. Some would begin digging the fossa, a ditch that could be several feet wide and deep, creating a significant obstacle for any attackers. The excavated earth, along with any available turf, would be used to construct the vallum, the rampart that surrounded the camp. This rampart would often be topped with the sudes, sharpened wooden stakes that each legionary carried, further enhancing the defenses. Watchtowers would be erected at strategic points along the rampart, providing vantage points for sentries. The camp had several gates, typically 4, located on each side and connected by the main roads within the camp. These gates were also heavily defended, often with additional fortifications and guard posts. Inside the camp, the layout was rigidly organized. The Via Praetoria led from the main gate to the Praetorium, the general's tent, located at the heart of the camp. The Via Principalis crossed the Via Praetoria at right angles, dividing the camp into 2 main sections. Each century had its designated area for tents, arranged in neat rows. There were also specific areas for the storage of supplies, the keeping of animals, and for latrines. This highly organized layout facilitated efficient movement, communication, and defense within the camp. The speed and efficiency with which a Roman legion could construct a fortified camp each night was a key factor in their military success, providing a secure base of operations wherever they went. Turning our attention to rations, the Roman soldiers' diet, while simple, was crucial for maintaining the strength and stamina required for their demanding duties. As mentioned, fermentum, or wheat, was the cornerstone of their diet. Each soldier was typically issued a daily ration of wheat, which they would then process themselves. This often involved grinding the grain using a hand mill, and then baking it into hardtack biscuits, or cooking it into a porridge. This daily task of preparing their own food was a fundamental part of the soldiers' routine. While hardtack and porridge were staples, the Roman army did make efforts to supplement the soldiers' diet with other foodstuffs when available. Meat, usually salted pork or beef, was provided, though perhaps not on a daily basis. Vegetables such as beans, lentils, onions, and garlic were also part of their rations when they could be procured. These provided essential vitamins and minerals. The army also relied on foraging to supplement their supplies, gathering edible plants, and sometimes even livestock from the surrounding countryside. However, this practice could be risky, especially in enemy territory. The logistics of supplying such a large army in the field were immense. Vast convoys of wagons, carrying grain, salt, wine, oil, and other essential supplies, would accompany the legions. These supply lines were vulnerable to attack, and maintaining them was a constant concern for Roman commanders. The army also relied on the establishment of supply depots in friendly territory. The ability of the Roman army to effectively provision itself over long distances was a testament to their organizational capabilities, but it was a constant challenge that required careful planning and execution. When the day's duties were finally done and the camp was secured, The legionaries would seek out leisure and recreation in the limited free time available. As we touched upon earlier, games were a popular way to pass the time. Board games like Ludus La Tranquilorum, which involved strategic movement of pieces, provided mental stimulation and a break from the physical demands of their lives. Dice games were also common, offering a chance for gambling and friendly competition. Music and storytelling played an important role in maintaining morale and fostering a sense of community. Soldiers might sing songs from their home regions or ballads of Roman victories. Veterans would share tales of their past experiences, recounting battles and campaigns, keeping the history and traditions of the legion alive. These stories also served to entertain and distract from the hardships of their present circumstances. Socializing around the campfires was a vital aspect of camp life. Sharing food, drink, and conversation helped to build bonds between soldiers and provided a sense of normalcy in an often abnormal existence. These moments of camaraderie were essential for maintaining morale and preventing the isolation and despair that could easily take root in such a demanding environment. The bonds of brotherhood forged within the Roman legions were profound and enduring. Imagine spending years, even decades, serving alongside the same men. You would have shared countless experiences, the grueling marches, the harsh conditions, the constant threat of danger, the exhilaration of victory, and the sorrow of loss. These shared experiences created a powerful sense of unity and mutual reliance. Soldiers knew that their lives often depended on the man fighting next to them. This fostered a deep sense of trust and loyalty. They looked out for each other, nursed each other when sick or wounded, and supported each other through difficult times. This camaraderie extended beyond the battlefield. In the shared living space of the tents, in the mess halls, and around the campfires, soldiers formed close friendships. They shared stories, jokes, and news from home. They offered each other comfort and support, creating a surrogate family in a world far from their own. This sense of belonging and mutual support was crucial for maintaining morale and resilience in the face of hardship. The loyalty that soldiers felt for their unit, their century, and their legion was a powerful force. It motivated them to fight harder, to endure more, and to stand together in the face of the enemy. This bond of brotherhood was a key element of the Roman army's strength, transforming individual soldiers into a cohesive and formidable fighting force. It was a testament to the human capacity for connection and the enduring power of shared experience in the face of adversity. But this intricate fabric of camp life and camaraderie was woven against a backdrop of unyielding authority, the ever-present force of discipline and punishment. The Roman army was not a band of individual warriors. It was a highly structured, rigorously controlled machine, and at its heart lay an unwavering commitment to order and obedience. Imagine the sheer rigidity of the discipline enforced within the Roman army. It permeated every aspect of a legionary's existence, from the precise folding of his tent to the flawless execution of battle maneuvers. Obedience to superiors was absolute and unquestioned. A direct order was not a suggestion. It was a command to be executed swiftly and without hesitation. This emphasis on order was not arbitrary. It was seen as fundamental to the legion's effectiveness. In the chaos of battle, the ability of soldiers to react instantly and in unison to commands could be the difference between victory and annihilation. This rigid structure extended to every level of the military hierarchy. Centurions held immense authority over their centuries, their commands carrying the weight of Roman military law. Tribunes, officers of higher rank, oversaw cohorts, and ultimately, the legate commanded the entire legion. This clear chain of command ensured that orders were disseminated efficiently and that accountability was maintained. Maintaining unit cohesion was paramount. The legion fought as a single entity, each soldier relying on the discipline and training of his comrades. Any break in the ranks, any act of individual disobedience, could create a weakness that the enemy could exploit, jeopardizing the lives of everyone. Strict discipline was the mortar that held this fighting force together, forging individual men into an unbreakable whole. Inevitably, in an army of thousands of men, there would be infractions. Minor offenses were a part of daily life, and the Roman military had a system in place to address them. Imagine a soldier caught sleeping on watch, a lapse in vigilance that could have endangered the entire camp. Or perhaps a minor act of insubordination, a muttered complaint against a superior officer. These offenses, while not capital crimes, cannot be ignored. Punishments for minor offenses varied. Fines were common, a deduction from the soldier's meager pay. Extra duties, such as cleaning latrines or performing additional guard duty, were also frequently assigned. For more persistent or slightly more serious offenses, a soldier might face demotion, losing rank and the privileges that came with it. The loss of status within the tightly knit military community could be a significant deterrent. While the discipline was strict, there was often an element of fairness and consistency in its application, at least within the context of the time. Centurions were expected to be firm, but just, and while personal biases could certainly play a role, the overall aim was to maintain order and prevent minor infractions from escalating into more serious problems. The punishments were intended to be corrective, to serve as a reminder of the standards of conduct expected of a Roman soldier. However, the Roman military also had a brutal side, reserved for major offenses. Imagine the severity of crimes that threatened the very fabric of the legion: mutiny, desertion, cowardice in the face of the enemy, or the murder of a fellow soldier. These were not simply breaches of discipline. They were acts of treason against the legion and against Rome itself, and they were met with swift and merciless punishment. Flogging, often with the flagrum, a whip embedded with bone or metal, was a common punishment for serious offenses. This could inflict horrific pain and leave lasting physical and psychological scars. For the most egregious crimes, the ultimate penalty was execution. This could take various forms, from beheading to crucifixion, a stark and public display of Roman justice, and a terrifying warning to others. Perhaps the most infamous and terrifying form of collective punishment was decimation. Imagine a unit that had shown cowardice or mutiny. As punishment, every 10th man, chosen by lot, would be executed by his own comrades. This brutal ritual was designed to restore order through sheer terror, forcing the remaining soldiers to confront their failure and the lethal consequences of disobedience. The psychological impact of such a punishment, both on those executed and those forced to carry out the executions, must have been devastating. The brutality of Roman military justice was a stark reminder of the high stakes of military service and the absolute power wielded by Roman commanders. The constant presence of such strict discipline inevitably had a significant psychological impact on the soldiers. Imagine living under the constant threat of punishment, where even minor infractions could lead to fines or extra labor, and major offenses could result in brutal beatings or even death. This environment could breed resentment and fear. The potential for rebellion, though often ruthlessly suppressed, was always present, simmering beneath the surface of enforced obedience. The weight of expectation, the constant pressure to conform, and the lack of personal freedom could take a significant toll on a soldier's mental and emotional state. Homesickness, anxiety, and a sense of alienation were likely common experiences. The rigid hierarchy and the absolute authority of superiors could create a climate of fear, stifling initiative and independent thought. However, the effectiveness of this strict discipline also depended heavily on leadership. A fair and just centurion, one who earned the respect of his men through competence and even-handedness, could mitigate some of the negative psychological effects. Soldiers were more likely to accept strict discipline if they believed it was applied fairly, and that their leaders were competent and cared for their well-being, within the constraints of military necessity. A tyrannical or capricious leader, on the other hand, could breed deep resentment and undermine unit cohesion. The psychological impact of Roman military discipline was a complex interplay of fear, obedience, resentment, and respect, shaped by the individual experiences of the soldiers and the quality of their leadership. Let us now delve deeper into the specifics of the system to truly understand the mechanisms and the human cost of Roman military discipline. The emphasis on strict discipline was ingrained from the moment a recruit, the tyro, entered the ranks. As we heard earlier, the training regimen was not just about physical prowess. It was about instilling unquestioning obedience and a deep-seated understanding of the importance of order. Every drill, every command, Every aspect of camp life was designed to reinforce this principle. The legionary was taught to act without thinking, to obey instantly, to become a cog in the well-oiled machine of the Roman army. This emphasis on obedience was seen as vital for survival in the brutal reality of ancient warfare. In the heat of battle, there was no time for debate or hesitation. Soldiers had to react as one, following the commands of their superiors without question. This level of discipline required constant reinforcement, and the threat of punishment was a powerful tool in achieving it. The Roman military operated on the principle that the well-being of the individual was secondary to the effectiveness of the unit as a whole. Minor offenses, while seemingly insignificant, were addressed promptly to prevent them from undermining the overall discipline of the legion. A soldier found guilty of negligence in his duties, such as failing to properly clean his weapons or equipment, might face a fine, a deduction from his pay, which was already meager. Repeated tardiness or minor breaches of camp regulations could result in extra duties, such as fatigue details, cleaning tasks, or additional guard duty. These punishments, while not physically brutal, serve as a constant reminder of the need to adhere to the rules and regulations of the army. Demotion, the loss of rank within the century or cohort, was a more serious punishment for repeated minor offenses or for showing a lack of leadership potential. The loss of status and the privileges that came with rank could be a significant blow to a soldier's pride and ambition. The system aimed for a degree of fairness and consistency, with centurions responsible for administering punishment for minor infractions within their units. However, the application of justice could vary depending on the temperament and judgment of individual officers. Major offenses were treated with extreme severity, reflecting the existential threat they posed to the legion's integrity and effectiveness. Desertion, abandoning one's post, or attempting to flee from battle, was considered an act of ultimate betrayal and was typically punishable by death. Mutiny, rebellion against the authority of one's superiors, was met with equally brutal consequences, often involving the execution of the ringleaders and sometimes the decimation of the entire unit involved. Cowardice in the face of the enemy, showing a lack of courage or failing to perform one's duty in battle, was also a capital offense. The Romans understood that the courage of each individual soldier was essential to the success of the legion, and any display of weakness could have devastating consequences for the entire army. The methods of execution were often designed to be public and terrifying, serving as a stark warning to other soldiers of the consequences of such transgressions. Beheading, crucifixion, and other brutal forms of capital punishment were not uncommon. Decimation, as mentioned earlier, was a particularly brutal and psychologically devastating form of collective punishment. When an entire unit was deemed to have acted with cowardice or insubordination, every 10th man, chosen by lot, will be beaten to death by his remaining comrades. This horrific ritual served not only as a punishment, but also as a way to shame and humiliate the survivors, forcing them to confront their failure and the brutal consequences of their actions. The psychological trauma inflicted on both the victims and the perpetrators of decimation must have been immense, leaving deep and lasting scars on the collective memory of the legion. The psychological impact of this strict disciplinary regime was multifaceted and complex. On the one hand, it undoubtedly instilled a high degree of obedience and order, contributing to the legion's legendary discipline and effectiveness on the battlefield. The constant threat of punishment served as a powerful deterrent against disobedience and ensured that soldiers adhered to the strict rules and regulations of the army. The predictability of the disciplinary system, while harsh, also provided a degree of certainty in a chaotic world. Soldiers knew the consequences of their actions, which could, in some ways, provide a sense of stability. However, the constant fear of punishment and the lack of personal autonomy could also breed resentment and stifle initiative. Soldiers might obey out of fear rather than conviction, leading to a brutal form of discipline that could potentially crack under extreme pressure. The brutal nature of Roman military justice could also lead to a sense of dehumanization, both of oneself and of one's comrades. The potential for rebellion, though ruthlessly suppressed, was always a lurking threat, fueled by the harsh realities of military life and the fear of arbitrary or excessive punishment. The role of leadership was crucial in mitigating the negative psychological effects of strict discipline. Competent and respected centurions, who led by example and demonstrated a genuine concern for the well-being of their men, within the bounds of military necessity, could foster a sense of loyalty and willing obedience. Fairness and consistency in the application of discipline were also essential for maintaining morale. Soldiers were more likely to accept harsh punishments if they believed they were administered justly and that their leaders were not acting out of malice or personal bias. Ultimately, the psychological impact of Roman military discipline was a delicate balance between the need for order and obedience and the human cost of such a rigid system. It was a system that forged one of the most formidable fighting forces in history, but it was also one that undoubtedly left deep and often unseen scars on the men who served within its ranks. But the life of a Roman soldier was not solely defined by hardship and discipline. There were also rewards and incentives, tangible and intangible, that motivated these men to endure years of service, to face unimaginable dangers, and to remain loyal to Rome. These rewards, both during their service and upon its completion, played a crucial role in maintaining the strength and longevity of the Roman military machine. Let's begin with the most immediate and regular form of compensation: regular pay, the stipendium. Imagine the anticipation of payday, a relatively infrequent but eagerly awaited event in the life of a legionary. While not a king's ransom, the stipendium provided soldiers with a means to purchase necessities and perhaps a few small luxuries. The exact amount varied throughout Roman history and depending on rank, but it was a consistent, if modest, income. However, this pay was not entirely theirs to keep. Deductions were a regular occurrence. The Roman army, in a somewhat pragmatic, if not entirely generous system, often charged soldiers for their equipment, their food rations, and even their burial costs, ensuring that the state bore minimal expense. These deductions could significantly reduce the actual amount of stipendium a soldier took home. Despite these deductions, opportunities for saving did exist, particularly for those who were frugal or who engaged in small-scale trading or crafts during their downtime. For some, the stipendium represented not just immediate spending power, but also the potential for future advancement. A soldier who demonstrated competence and leadership potential might aspire to higher rank, which came with increased pay and privileges. The prospect of a better future, however distant, was a powerful motivator for many. Beyond regular pay, the Roman military offered a clear system of promotions and advancement. Imagine the pride and satisfaction of a soldier who had proven his worth, who had distinguished himself through bravery, skill, or leadership. The ranks within a legion provided a hierarchical ladder that a dedicated soldier could climb. Starting as a humble legionary, a miles, a soldier could aspire to become a principalis, a junior officer holding positions such as signifer, standard bearer, or optio, the centurion's assistant. The most coveted promotion for a common soldier was to the rank of centurion, the backbone of the legion. Centurions commanded centuries of roughly 80 men and held significant authority and responsibility. Promotion to centurion was based on a combination of merit, experience, and often political connections or battlefield valor. Veterans, those who had served with distinction for many years, were often prime candidates for these leadership roles. The Roman military valued experience and competence. A soldier who had seen many campaigns, who had proven his courage under fire, and who demonstrated the ability to lead men effectively was more likely to be recognized and rewarded with promotion. This system, while not always perfectly meritocratic, provided a powerful incentive for soldiers to excel and to dedicate themselves to their service. The possibility of rising through the ranks offered not only increased pay and status, but also a greater sense of purpose and achievement. For many soldiers, the immediate aftermath of a successful campaign offered another potential source of reward: spoils of war. Imagine the scene after a hard-fought victory, the enemy routed, their towns and possessions now at the mercy of the victorious Roman army. Plunder, or preda, was a common practice in ancient warfare, and Roman soldiers often had the opportunity to acquire booty, valuables, weapons, and even slaves from conquered territories. The distribution of these spoils was typically overseen by the commanding officers, with a share allocated to the state and the remainder divided among the soldiers based on rank and contribution to the victory. This potential for immediate enrichment could be a powerful motivator, offering a tangible reward for the risks and hardships of warfare. However, there were ethical considerations and limitations. Uncontrolled looting could undermine discipline and turn local populations into bitter enemies. Roman commanders often attempted to regulate the distribution of spoils to maintain order and prevent excessive brutality. While the allure of plunder was undeniable, it was not the primary incentive for Roman soldiers, and discipline remained paramount even in the aftermath of victory. The ultimate rewards for a Roman soldier came at the end of his years of service. Imagine the day a veteran, his hair perhaps graying, his body bearing the marks of past campaigns, finally received his discharge, his missio. After typically 20 to 25 years of arduous service, the Roman state offered significant benefits to these seasoned warriors. One of the most significant rewards was a grant of land, often in the newly conquered territories where they had served. This provided veterans with a means of establishing themselves and their families, becoming landowners, and contributing to the Roman economy and society. For soldiers who had served with distinction in auxiliary units, the reward upon retirement was often the granting of Roman citizenship, a highly valued privilege that conferred numerous legal and social advantages. In addition to land grants and citizenship, veterans often received a pension, a monetary payment to help them transition to civilian life and provide for their future. This recognition of their years of service and sacrifice was a crucial element in maintaining the loyalty of the legions. The promise of a secure future after years of hardship was a powerful incentive to serve faithfully until the end. The status of veterans in Roman society was generally high. They were respected for their service to the state, their experience, and their loyalty. They often held positions of influence in their communities and served as a living testament to the power and reach of Rome. Their legacy lived on through their families and their contributions to Roman society. The rewards and incentives offered by Rome were not merely acts of gratitude. They were strategic investments in the long-term strength and stability of the empire, ensuring a steady stream of dedicated men willing to bear the burdens of military service. Let's delve deeper into the intricacies of these rewards to truly appreciate their significance in the life of a Roman soldier. The regular pay, the stipendium, while subject to deductions, provided a crucial foundation for the soldiers' economic well-being. Initially, under the Republic, pay was sporadic and sometimes inadequate. However, with the reforms of figures like Gaius Marius, a more regular and standardized system of payment was established. The stipendium allowed soldiers to purchase essential items such as extra food, better quality clothing or footwear, and perhaps small personal items or gifts to send home. While the deductions for equipment, weapons, armor, and even tentage could seem harsh, they also instilled a sense of responsibility for their gear. A soldier was more likely to take care of something he was effectively paying for. The opportunity to save, however limited, offered a glimmer of hope for the future, a chance to accumulate some wealth over years of service. For those with ambition, the increased pay associated with higher ranks served as a significant motivator for advancement. The system of promotions was a vital component of the Roman military structure, fostering ambition and rewarding merit. While birth and social standing could sometimes play a role, particularly in the higher echelons of command, the path to advancement for the common soldier was largely based on demonstrated ability and valor. A soldier who consistently displayed courage in battle, leadership qualities, and a strong understanding of military tactics could be noticed by a centurion and potentially recommended for promotion to a principalis. These junior officer roles provided valuable experience in leadership and command, paving the way for further advancement. The ultimate goal for many was to become a centurion, a position of significant authority and responsibility. Centurions were the linchpins of the legion, responsible for the discipline, training, and combat effectiveness of their centuries. Promotion to this rank was a testament to years of dedicated service and exceptional leadership qualities. Veterans, with their extensive combat experience and deep understanding of military life, were highly valued as potential centurions. The possibility of rising through the ranks not only offered better pay and status, but also a greater sense of purpose and control over one's destiny within the military hierarchy. The allure of spoils of war was a powerful, if sometimes problematic, incentive. After a successful conquest, the opportunity to plunder enemy towns and possessions offered a more immediate and potentially substantial reward than their regular stipendium. Soldiers might acquire valuable goods, precious metals, and even slaves, which could significantly improve their financial situation. The distribution of these spoils was typically regulated to prevent chaos and maintain order. A portion would be set aside for the state treasury, while the remainder would be divided among the soldiers based on their rank and their contribution to the victory. Higher-ranking officers generally received a larger share, while the prospect of plunder could incentivize soldiers during campaigns. Roman commanders were also aware of the potential downsides. Uncontrolled looting could alienate local populations, making pacification more difficult and potentially leading to further conflict. There were also ethical considerations, even within the context of ancient warfare, regarding the treatment of civilians and the destruction of property. Roman military law often included regulations against excessive looting and violence, though these were not always strictly enforced. The promise of spoils was a double-edged sword, offering a tangible reward for victory, but also posing a potential threat to discipline and long-term stability. The retirement and rewards offered to veterans were crucial for ensuring the long-term loyalty and effectiveness of the Roman military. After completing their term of service, typically 20 years for legionaries and 25 years for auxiliaries, veterans were entitled to significant benefits. The grant of land was perhaps the most significant of these rewards. Veterans were often settled in newly conquered territories, where they could establish farms and contribute to Romanization. This not only provided them with a means of livelihood, but also created loyal communities of former soldiers who could be called upon in times of need. For auxiliary soldiers, who were often recruited from non-Roman populations, the reward of Roman citizenship upon honorable discharge was a highly valued privilege. It granted them the rights and protections of Roman citizens, integrating them and their families more fully into the empire. Pensions, in the form of monetary payments, were also provided to help veterans transition to civilian life and ensure their financial security. The amount of the pension could vary depending on rank and length of service. The legacy and status of veterans in Roman society were generally high. They were respected for their service and sacrifice, and their experience was often valued in their communities. Veterans often held positions of local leadership and serve as a powerful symbol of Roman power and resilience. The rewards offered to Roman soldiers upon retirement were not just acts of gratitude. They were a strategic investment in the future of the empire, ensuring a steady supply of motivated recruits who could look forward to a secure and respected future after years of faithful service. This system of rewards played a crucial role in the longevity and success of the Roman military for centuries. But the Roman soldier's world was not solely confined to the stark realities of the battlefield and the structured confines of the camp. For many, their service also involved encounters with civilians, interactions that ranged from the mundane to the complex, shaping both the lives of the soldiers and the communities in which they were stationed. Imagine a legion stationed in a garrison town. These were often vibrant hubs of activity, and the presence of a large military contingent had a profound impact on the local economy and social fabric. Trade flourished as merchants catered to the needs of the soldiers, providing food, supplies, and even luxury goods. Relationships, both formal and informal, often developed between soldiers and the local populace. Soldiers, far from home and often lonely, might form friendships or even romantic attachments with local women. This cultural exchange was a two-way street. Soldiers were exposed to new customs, languages, and ways of life, while the local communities were influenced by Roman culture, language, Latin often becoming a lingua franca, and the very presence of Roman power. The impact of the military presence was undeniable, bringing both economic opportunities and the potential for social change to these communities. However, the presence of the Roman military in conquered territories also meant occupation duties. Imagine the less convivial aspects of this interaction. Soldiers were tasked with maintaining order, which could involve policing local disputes, enforcing Roman law, and ensuring the payment of taxes. This role often placed them in a position of authority over the local population, creating the potential for tension and resentment. The suppression of rebellions, when they occurred, was a brutal but necessary task for maintaining Roman control. Soldiers were often called upon to quell unrest, sometimes with significant force. This could lead to conflict and further animosity between the occupiers and the occupied. The line between maintaining order and oppression was often a delicate one, and the actions of individual soldiers and commanders could have a significant impact on the relationship between the Roman military and the local communities. Despite the potential for conflict, cultural exchange was an inevitable consequence of the Roman military presence. Imagine soldiers encountering new customs, religious practices, and artistic traditions in the various provinces of the empire. Some might adopt local styles of dress, incorporate new foods into their diet, or even learn the local language. Roman engineering and technology also had a significant influence on conquered peoples, with the construction of roads, aqueducts, and public buildings transforming the landscapes of the provinces. Roman law and administration also left a lasting legacy. This cultural exchange was not always a peaceful or equal process, often reflecting the power dynamics between the conqueror and the conquered. However, it did lead to a degree of cultural fusion, with both Roman and local cultures influencing each other in various ways. The unique position of Roman soldiers in occupied territories often presented significant ethical considerations. Imagine a young soldier, far from home, wielding considerable power over the lives of civilians. The potential for abuse of this power was ever present. Instances of extortion, theft, and even violence against civilians, while officially condemned, undoubtedly occurred. The temptations of power, coupled with the stresses of military life and the often brutal realities of conquest, could lead some soldiers to act in ways that violated Roman law and moral principles. Roman military law and the leadership of responsible commanders emphasized the importance of discipline and restraint in interactions with civilians. Soldiers were expected to uphold Roman values of justice and fairness, even in occupied territories. However, the enforcement of these principles could be challenging, especially in the heat of conquest or during periods of unrest. The moral dilemmas faced by Roman soldiers in their encounters with civilians were a complex and often overlooked aspect of their lives, highlighting the human cost of empire and the constant need for ethical conduct, even in the context of military occupation. Let's delve deeper into the nuances of these encounters to truly understand the multifaceted relationships that developed between the Roman military and the civilian populations they encountered. Garrison life offered a prolonged period of interaction, moving beyond the fleeting encounters of a marching army. Imagine a legion stationed in a town for months, or even years. This extended presence inevitably led to a more complex relationship with the local inhabitants. Economically, the arrival of a legion could be a boon for local traders. The soldiers represented a significant consumer base, creating demand for goods and services. Local farmers would sell their produce, artisans their crafts, and merchants their wares. This influx of Roman spending power could stimulate the local economy and lead to the growth of trade networks. However, it could also lead to inflation and resentment if the locals felt they were being exploited by Roman merchants or by the soldiers themselves. Socially, the interactions could be varied. As mentioned, relationships between Roman soldiers and local women were not uncommon, sometimes leading to marriages or informal unions and the birth of children who straddled both Roman and local identities. Friendships could also develop between soldiers and civilians, based on shared interests or simply the proximity of daily life. However, the inherent power imbalance between occupier and occupied always cast a shadow over these interactions. Resentment could simmer beneath the surface, fueled by the imposition of Roman rule, the burden of taxation, and the occasional heavy-handedness of the military. Cultural misunderstandings and prejudices could also create friction. The impact of the military presence on local communities was significant and long-lasting. Roman infrastructure projects, such as roads, aqueducts, and public baths, often benefited the local population. However, the presence of a large military force could also strain resources and lead to overcrowding. The imposition of Roman law and administrative structures could disrupt existing social hierarchies and customs, leading to resistance and resentment. Occupation duties placed Roman soldiers in a direct role of authority over civilian populations. Imagine a soldier tasked with collecting taxes, a duty that could easily lead to conflict and resentment if not handled with fairness and sensitivity. Policing local disputes, enforcing Roman law, and suppressing banditry were also part of their responsibilities. While these duties could contribute to stability and security in the region, they also reinforced the perception of the Romans as occupiers. The suppression of rebellions, even small-scale unrest, often involved the use of force and could lead to civilian casualties. These events could further alienate the local population and create a cycle of violence and resentment. The Roman approach to maintaining order often prioritized the swift and decisive use of force, which, while effective in the short term, could have long-term negative consequences for the relationship between the occupiers and the occupied. Cultural exchange, while sometimes unintentional, had a profound impact on both Roman soldiers and the conquered populations. Imagine a soldier stationed in Gaul adopting the more comfortable trousers worn by the locals, or a legionary in Egypt marveling at the intricate religious rituals. The vastness of the Roman Empire exposed soldiers to a wide array of cultures, broadening their horizons and sometimes challenging their preconceived notions. The adoption of new technologies, such as improved agricultural techniques or different styles of weaponry, also occurred through these interactions. Conversely, Roman culture had a significant influence on conquered peoples. The Latin language became a language of administration, trade, and even literature in many provinces. Roman architectural styles, legal systems, and forms of entertainment were adopted and adapted by local elites. This cultural exchange was not always a balanced affair, often reflecting the dominant position of Roman culture, but it did lead to a degree of cultural hybridization that shaped the development of the provinces. The ethical considerations faced by Roman soldiers in occupied territories were complex and often deeply personal. Imagine a soldier ordered to confiscate property from a civilian family, or to participate in the brutal suppression of a local protest. These situations could create significant moral dilemmas, forcing soldiers to reconcile their duty to Rome with their own sense of right and wrong. The potential for the abuse of power was a constant temptation. The authority wielded by even a low-ranking soldier over civilians could easily be misused for personal gain or out of sheer cruelty. Roman military law and the teachings of Stoic philosophy, which influenced some Roman thinkers, emphasized the importance of justice, fairness, and restraint in dealing with conquered populations. Commanders often issued strict orders against looting, violence, and other forms of abuse. However, the enforcement of these orders could be challenging, especially in the chaos of war or in remote postings far from the direct supervision of senior officers. The moral choices made by individual soldiers in their encounters with civilians had a significant impact on the reputation of Rome and the long-term stability of the empire. Acts of kindness and justice could foster goodwill and cooperation, while acts of brutality and oppression could breed resentment and resistance, ultimately undermining Roman authority. The ethical dimensions of Roman military occupation are a stark reminder of the human complexities inherent in any situation where one group holds power over another. The Roman soldiers' commitment was not a short-term affair. We must now turn our thoughts to the long years of service, the decades of dedication that shaped not only the Roman Empire, but also the very men who served it. Imagine the sheer length of service demanded of a Roman soldier. Typically, a legionary served for 20 to 25 years, a significant portion of a man's life in an era when life expectancy was far shorter than it is today. Auxiliary soldiers often served even longer. This was not a brief adventure. It was a long-term commitment, a career that consumed a man's youth and middle age. The challenges of enduring so many years in the military were immense. The physical toll was significant. Years of marching, carrying heavy equipment, and engaging in combat took a heavy toll on the body. Arthritis, back problems, and other chronic ailments were common among veterans. The mental and emotional strain was equally profound. The constant exposure to danger, the separation from family, and the rigid discipline could wear down even the strongest of men. Service on the frontiers of the empire, frontier duty, presented its own unique set of hardships. Imagine being stationed in a remote outpost, far from civilization, facing the constant threat of barbarian raids. The conditions could be harsh and unforgiving: scorching heat in the desert, freezing cold in the north, relentless rain in Britannia. The isolation and loneliness of frontier life could be particularly difficult to bear. Soldiers were often far from their homes and families, with limited contact with the outside world. The sense of being cut off from society could lead to depression and a decline in morale. The constant threat of attack, the need for constant vigilance, and the harsh climate created a unique set of challenges for soldiers serving on the edges of the Roman world. And then there were the campaigns and wars, the defining experiences that shaped the lives of many Roman soldiers. Imagine the intensity and danger of battle, the sheer chaos and violence of ancient warfare. The Roman soldier was trained to fight in close quarters, to engage in hand-to-hand combat where survival depended on skill, strength, and luck. Witnessing death, inflicting violence, and facing the constant threat of one's own mortality took a profound psychological toll. Many soldiers were forever changed by their experiences in battle, carrying the scars of war long after they returned home. All of these experiences, the long years of service, the hardships of frontier duty, and the horrors of war, contributed to the transformation of a soldier. Imagine the journey of a young recruit, fresh from civilian life, gradually being molded into a hardened veteran. Military service shaped a soldier's identity and worldview in profound ways. Discipline, loyalty, and resilience became ingrained virtues. Soldiers learned to obey orders without question, to endure hardship without complaint, and to rely on their comrades in the face of adversity. The shared experiences of military life forged strong bonds of camaraderie, creating a sense of belonging and purpose. However, the transition back to civilian life after years of military service could be challenging. Soldiers might find it difficult to adjust to the routines and expectations of civilian society. They might struggle to find employment or to reintegrate into family life. The psychological scars of war could also make it difficult to connect with those who had not shared their experiences. The legacy and lasting impact of the Roman military experience are undeniable. The Roman army was a key factor in the expansion and maintenance of the Roman Empire, shaping the course of Western civilization. The discipline, organization, and engineering skills of the Roman military were unmatched in their time. The Roman soldier, through his dedication, his endurance, and his willingness to sacrifice, played a crucial role in this historical drama. His story is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, both its capacity for violence and its capacity for resilience and loyalty. Let's delve deeper into these aspects of the Roman soldier's experience to truly understand the profound impact of their long years of service. The sheer length of service demanded of a Roman soldier is almost unimaginable by modern standards. 20 to 25 years was the norm for legionaries, and auxiliary soldiers often served even longer. This meant that a soldier typically enlisted in his late teens or early 20s and would not be discharged until his late 30s or 40s, if he survived that long. This lengthy commitment had a profound impact on their lives. It meant that they spent their prime years away from their families and communities, missing out on important life events. It also meant that they were constantly exposed to danger, hardship, and the physical and psychological demands of military life. The cumulative effect of these years of service could be devastating. The physical toll was immense. The constant marching with heavy equipment, the strenuous labor of camp construction, and the brutal nature of combat took a heavy toll on the body. Soldiers often suffered from chronic pain, injuries, and illnesses. Arthritis, rheumatism, and hernias were common ailments. The lack of proper medical care in the field often exacerbated these conditions. The mental and emotional strain was equally significant. The constant threat of death, the separation from loved ones, and the rigid discipline could lead to anxiety, depression, and other psychological problems. The experience of witnessing violence and death in battle could leave deep scars on the psyche. Soldiers might suffer from what we would today call post-traumatic stress disorder, experiencing flashbacks, nightmares, and emotional numbness. The Roman military system, while recognizing the importance of physical fitness, often paid less attention to the psychological well-being of its soldiers. Frontier duty presented a unique set of challenges. The Roman Empire was vast, and its frontiers stretched for thousands of miles, from the deserts of North Africa to the forests of Germania. Soldiers stationed on these frontiers faced harsh conditions, constant threats, and often extreme isolation. Imagine a small fort perched on a windswept hill, overlooking a vast, empty plain. The nearest Roman settlement might be days away, and the only contact with the outside world might be infrequent supply convoys. The sense of isolation could be overwhelming. The threat of barbarian raids was a constant reality. Soldiers had to be constantly vigilant, guarding against surprise attacks and skirmishes. The harsh climate also took its toll. In the north, soldiers endured freezing temperatures, heavy snow, and constant rain. In the desert, they faced scorching heat, sandstorms, and the lack of water. These conditions could lead to disease, exhaustion, and a decline in morale. The lack of comforts and the constant danger made frontier duty a particularly demanding and often demoralizing experience. Campaigns and wars were the defining events in the lives of many Roman soldiers. These were the moments of intense action, of life or death struggle, that tested their training, their courage, and their endurance to the limit. Imagine the chaos of battle, the deafening noise, the press of bodies, the fear and adrenaline surging through your veins. The Roman soldier was trained to fight in close quarters, to engage in hand-to-hand combat with swords, spears, and shields. This was a brutal and visceral experience, where survival depended on skill, strength, and luck. The Roman legion was a formidable fighting machine, but it was not invincible. Battles could be long and bloody, with heavy casualties on both sides. Soldiers witnessed their comrades falling, their bodies mutilated. They inflicted violence themselves, killing and wounding their enemies. These experiences could leave lasting psychological scars. Soldiers might be haunted by memories of the battlefield, plagued by nightmares, and emotionally numb. The psychological impact of war was a significant burden that many soldiers carried with them for the rest of their lives. All of these experiences, the long years of service, the hardships of frontier duty, and the horrors of war, contributed to the transformation of a soldier. Imagine the journey of a young recruit, full of idealism and naivete, gradually being molded into a hardened veteran, cynical and world-weary. Military service shaped a soldier's identity and worldview in profound ways. Discipline became ingrained in their very being. They learned to obey orders without question, to follow routines, and to suppress their individual desires for the good of the unit. This discipline was essential for maintaining order in the ranks and for ensuring effectiveness in battle. Loyalty to their comrades, their century, and their legion became a powerful force. Soldiers relied on each other for survival and support, forming strong bonds of camaraderie. This loyalty often transcended personal relationships, becoming a defining aspect of their identity. However, the transition back to civilian life after years of military service could be extremely challenging. Soldiers might find it difficult to adjust to the relative freedom and lack of structure in civilian society. They might struggle to find employment, as their military skills were not always transferable to civilian occupations. Reintegrating into family life could also be difficult, as they had been away for so long and might have changed significantly. The psychological scars of war could also make it difficult to connect with those who had not shared their experiences. Veterans might feel alienated, misunderstood, and unable to relate to civilian concerns. The legacy and lasting impact of the Roman military experience are undeniable. The Roman army was a key factor in the creation and maintenance of the Roman Empire, one of the most influential empires in world history. The discipline, organization, and military prowess of the Roman legions allowed Rome to conquer and control vast territories for centuries. Roman military engineering, with its roads, bridges, and fortifications, transformed the landscapes of the provinces. The Roman soldier, through his dedication, his endurance, and his willingness to sacrifice, played a crucial role in shaping the course of Western civilization. His story is a complex and often contradictory one, filled with both heroism and brutality, discipline and hardship, loyalty and loss. It is a story that continues to resonate with us today, reminding us of the enduring power of the human spirit and the profound impact of military service on those who bear its burdens. As our journey through the world of the Roman soldier draws to a close, it's important to pause and reflect on the totality of their experience, to truly grasp the weight of their commitment, the complexity of their lives, and the enduring legacy they left behind. Let us recap the soldier's life, the tapestry woven from threads of iron and sacrifice. We've walked alongside the recruit as he endured the rigors of training and discipline, transforming from a raw civilian into a hardened soldier. We've felt the weight of his armor, the sting of the training gladius, the endless pounding of his feet on the marching ground. We've witnessed the daily duties and responsibilities that filled his days, the monotonous guard duty, the back-breaking labor of construction, the perilous patrols into hostile territory. We've stood with him on the battlefield, amidst the realities of combat, experiencing the terror and brutality of ancient warfare, the clash of steel, the cries of the wounded. We've shared the camp life and camaraderie, the building of fortifications, the meager rations, the precious moments of leisure, and the unbreakable bonds of brotherhood. We've felt the sting of discipline and punishment, the swift and often harsh justice of the Roman military system. And we've glimpsed the rewards and incentives that motivated him. The stipendium, the promotions, the spoils of war, and the promise of land and citizenship upon retirement. We've also explored his encounters with civilians, the complex interactions in garrison towns, the burdens of occupation duties, the cultural exchange, and the ethical dilemmas he faced. And finally, we've contemplated the long years of service, the physical and psychological toll, the hardships of frontier duty, and the profound transformation that military life wrought upon him. The life of a Roman soldier was, in essence, a paradox. It was a life of immense hardship, of constant danger, of unwavering discipline, and often of profound sacrifice. Yet, it was also a life of purpose, of camaraderie, of adventure, and for some, of eventual reward and recognition. It was a life that demanded much, but also gave much in return, shaping not only the men who lived it, but also the course of history itself. We cannot fully understand the Roman soldier without acknowledging the importance of the Roman military in the grand sweep of history. The legions were the engine of Roman expansion, the shield that protected its vast territories, and the instrument that enforced its will. Without their military might, the Roman Empire, as we know it, would never have existed. Imagine the scale of their campaigns, from the conquest of Gaul by Julius Caesar to the expansion into Britain and the eastern Mediterranean. The Roman army marched across continents, fought countless battles, and subdued diverse peoples, creating an empire that stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to the deserts of Mesopotamia. This military power had a profound impact on the course of history. Roman law, administration, and culture spread throughout the conquered territories, leaving a lasting legacy that continues to influence our world today. The very languages we speak, the roads we travel, and the legal systems we use often bear the imprint of Roman influence. The Roman military was not just about brute force. It was also about organization, strategy, and engineering. The legions were renowned for their discipline, their tactical flexibility, and their ability to adapt to different terrains and enemies. Roman military organization, with its hierarchical structure and clear chain of command, was a model of efficiency. Roman military tactics, such as the testudo formation and the wedge formation, were highly effective on the battlefield. Roman military engineering, with its roads, bridges, fortifications, and siege engines, was unmatched in its time. The Roman military legacy is one of both conquest and innovation, a testament to the power of organized force and strategic thinking. However, we cannot celebrate the achievements of the Roman military without acknowledging the human cost of empire. Behind the triumphs and the monuments, there lay a darker reality, a story of personal sacrifice and suffering. The physical toll of military service was immense. As we've heard, Soldiers endured years of marching, hard labor, and combat, often suffering from injuries, illnesses, and chronic pain. Their bodies were worn down by the constant strain, and many did not survive to see their retirement. The psychological toll was equally profound. Soldiers faced the constant threat of death, witnessed horrific violence, and experienced the trauma of war. Many returned home with lasting mental and emotional scars, struggling to adjust to civilian life. The ethical complexities of war and conquest cannot be ignored. The Roman Empire was built on conquest, on the subjugation of other peoples. This often involved violence, destruction, and the exploitation of resources. While Roman rule brought certain benefits, it also imposed a heavy burden on the conquered populations. The Roman soldier, as the instrument of this conquest, was often placed in morally ambiguous situations, forced to carry out orders that might conflict with his own conscience. The human cost of empire was not just the suffering of the soldiers, but also the suffering of those who were conquered and ruled by Rome. This exploration of the Roman soldier's life compels us to engage in reflecting on our perspective. How do we, in our own time, view military service? What are our values and attitudes towards war, patriotism, and heroism? We often hold romanticized notions of soldiers, shaped by movies and stories that glorify combat and downplay the harsh realities of military life. We tend to focus on the heroic deeds, the acts of bravery, while overlooking the mundane routines, the psychological toll, and the moral complexities of warfare. We must challenge these assumptions and strive for a more nuanced and realistic understanding of the soldier's experience. Empathy is crucial. We must try to understand the motivations, the fears, and the hopes of those who serve in the military, both in the past and in the present. We must acknowledge the sacrifices they make, the burdens they carry, and the challenges they face. This doesn't mean condoning war or blindly supporting every military action, but it does mean treating soldiers with respect and compassion. By reflecting on our own perspectives and cultivating empathy, we can move beyond simplistic narratives and develop a more mature and informed understanding of the human cost of conflict. And yet, despite the brutality and the hardships, the enduring fascination with the Roman military persists. Why do we continue to be drawn to their story, centuries after the fall of their empire? If you enjoyed this, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Videos this long take a lot of time and effort, and this serves as motivation for my efforts. But again, only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. The allure of their discipline and strength is undeniable. The image of the Roman legionary, clad in armor, marching in perfect formation, is a powerful symbol of order and control. We are captivated by their military prowess, their ability to conquer vast territories and build impressive structures. Their engineering feats, their tactical innovations, and their unwavering discipline continue to inspire awe. But perhaps our fascination goes beyond mere admiration for military might. The Roman military offers valuable lessons in organization, leadership, and logistics. Their ability to adapt to different challenges, their emphasis on training and discipline, and their strategic thinking are still relevant today. By studying their history, we can gain insights into the dynamics of power, the complexities of empire, and the enduring human struggle for order and security. The story of the Roman soldier is also a human story, a story of courage, sacrifice, and resilience. It is a story that reminds us of the enduring capacity of the human spirit to endure hardship, to forge bonds of loyalty, and to find meaning in the face of adversity. It is a story that challenges us to confront the darker aspects of our history, while also celebrating the achievements and the sacrifices of those who served.